Hey everyone, welcome to Mathieu, Vibrant Health, my podcast, and this is another addition to the Healing Stories part of my podcast. And I'm very happy to introduce you to my really good new friend, Courtney Voss. Welcome to my podcast, Courtney.
Hi, Michael. It's so good to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Courtney and I met taking a nutrition class with our dear teacher, Mary Ruddick. And then we made a connection there and and I reached out to you recently. And anyway, we've been kind of just keeping up with each other. So Courtney works full-time with a more, well, you tell us what your full-time job is.
So I, during the daytime hours, I'm a cost analyst for a chemicals manufacturer, but I moonlight as a nutritional therapy practitioner. So I work with clients. Yeah.
Yep. And but Courtney also has down the road here, I'm hoping Courtney would be open to me interviewing her again because I want to start having practitioners on my podcast. And but for today, it's Courtney has quite a healing story to tell. And so why don't you just jump in and kind of give us a little bit of a history background for where you were at.
Sure. So I'm not sure how far back you want me to go, but really I came to the keto carnivore space like most people do. They're struggling with their health. And my kind of lifelong struggle has been or was an anxiety disorder. At the age of 18, I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder. I had my first panic attack whenever I was 17. I didn't know that that's what it was at the time. Went to a psychiatrist. He immediately put me on an antidepressant. And I was on that for the next 18 plus years before I was able to come off of it. In that kind of time frame, some of the other things that I struggled with were chronic constipation, acne, low back pain that I almost had surgery for. I was taking 2-hour naps a day in addition to like a full night's sleep, zero energy, thyroid issues, just a whole slew of different symptoms that my body was trying to communicate to me, and I was just overriding with medications. So that's how I really came to this space.
Yep. So take it back to when you were 10 or even younger than 10 years old. What was your diet like then?
So I jokingly, but also seriously tell people when they ask me this question that I was the kid who had Dr. Pepper in their sippy cup. And that's a joke, but it's also very real. I maintain to this day that Dr. Pepper is the hardest thing that I've ever had to give up.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm from Texas. So yeah, that's a staple here. I was never a sweet tea person. It was always Dr. Pepper for me. But I'm also from a Czech family on my grandma's side. And so it was very heavy with casseroles and breads and, yeast and starches, potatoes, corn, all of those kinds of things. Not heavy into meat. And definitely not vegetables. Mom didn't like vegetables, so we didn't get fed vegetables. So it was very driven by fast food, a lot of fast food, a lot of pizza, McDonald's, all of those kinds of things.
Potatoes?
So many potatoes.
Yeah.
So many potatoes and corn. I remember the doctor asking me at one point, like, well, what kind of vegetables do you eat? This was years and years ago. I was like, my favorite are potatoes and corn. She's like, those aren't vegetables. I was like, what? I couldn't conceive of that. So yeah, pretty sad.
Okay. And were you a fast food, got that? Were you like a cereal person for breakfast?
Oh, my favorite meal. Cereal is my favorite meal, and not for breakfast. It had to be for dinner. I got that from my grandpa, but yeah.
Oh, really? So what were the cereals of choice back then?
Okay, so O's, got to be one of my favorites. Do you remember O's? Those are like super old school. They're the kind that like totally destroy the roof of your mouth, but they have like granola in the center of them. Amazing.
Nope.
O's, Fruit Loops, Honeycomb, Apple Jacks, and Lucky Charms.
Okay. Yep. Those are all on the palette. I don't know O's though, but I'm
Oh,
older than
yeah.
you. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was a Captain Crunch and then all the other sugary gross ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of scary. Anything else you want to say about your diet back then?
No, that unfortunately about sums it up.
Okay. And then you already kind of gave when, at least when the anxiety part kicked in. And constipation, was that already happening?
Oh yeah, that was lifelong. And I do remember incidences of painful constipation as even just as a toddler. So chronic
Yeah.
constipation had been with me my whole life. I did not know any different.
Yeah. And not for some people, this is going to be TMI, but I had someone else I interviewed on my podcast who, for her, sometimes it was a week or two between
Oh
bowel
yeah,
movements.
I would say on average once to twice, 1 to 2 times a week on average.
Yeah.
And it was, I actually went to the doctor one time in high school and I said, every time I try to go to the restroom, I cry. Like, I don't understand not like sobbing, but tears would stream down my face. I don't understand, like, is there something to that? And he was just like, well, how hard are you pushing? Again, didn't
Yeah.
attribute that to constipation at all. I just thought it was my normal. Yeah, you're not supposed to cry when you go to the bathroom.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No. Okay. So lifelong on that. You talked about low back pain. Do you remember when that got
I do.
started?
Yeah, so it started with an injury my junior year in high school. I was in PE class and I went to go serve a volleyball. Like, I wasn't on the volleyball team or anything, but I went to go overhand serve a volleyball and I guess I did it wrong and I tweaked my back. And that was when my chiropractic visits started because it significantly tweaked my back. And then just kind of off and on from, my junior year of high school until really I changed my diet. And it got so bad to a point where I actually went and visited with a back surgeon because it was just, I couldn't get it to let up.
Yeah.
And so he thankfully he said, let's try to do some physical therapy before we agree to proceed with surgery. I did physical therapy for about 6 weeks and I did notice some improvement. And it was because he said, we noticed the improvement, that he was like, well, let's keep going that route and not do the surgery. So I really think the universe stepped in for me there. Because once I changed my diet, made, adjustments to my diet, that back pain went away. So.
Yeah. And then what was diet like more through your 20s?
Same thing. So, I mean, anything packaged, processed, Hamburger Helper was a staple in the house. My poor husband, still eating a little bit more meat because, it was on our bill this time, not my mom's or, not our families or anything like that. So a little bit more meat, but nothing that was not the focus. Still very, very heavy bread, carbs, starches, grains. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And then, so tell us about how you got into the transition with your diet.
Okay. So we had a friend of ours who had been doing the ketogenic diet for a little while, and he came and visited us. He was my husband's childhood friend from high school. And he came and visited us and he looked great. He had lost like 25 pounds. You could tell that like the swelling that was kind of systemic in him had really gone down. And no sooner did he walk out of our front door to tell us bye, my husband turned to me on the couch and he said, I want to try the ketogenic diet. And the only thing I knew about ketogenic or had heard about the ketogenic diet was you just eat slabs of butter and bacon. Well, at the time that terrified me. I was like, there's no way that that's right. So I was like, if we want to do this, like, I want to do it the right way. So I'm all on board, but let me do some research. So the next day we jumped into what we knew of at the time, to be the ketogenic diet. And we knew what we needed to avoid, right? We needed to reduce carbs significantly. And that was huge for us because I've told you what our diet was. So it was the next day, it was September 1st of 2019. We jumped all in. The research started that day, and we did the ketogenic diet for about 5 months before we transitioned.
Yep. Transition to
Carnivore.
yeah. Okay. So what did you, so in that 5-month period you were keto, what kind of things were you eating, and what did you notice in how you're feeling?
So obviously more meats and the most vegetables I have ever eaten in my life. I tell people that I never had a bite of romaine until I was 36 years old. That's how old I was when we started the ketogenic diet. It was the very first time I'd ever had a bite of romaine lettuce. Vegetables did not exist for me. So I love broccoli. So it was a lot of broccoli, cauliflower, as everyone's accustomed to. But it was also a lot of nuts and a lot of spinach. And so some things started to present themselves in places that they didn't belong, from eating those kinds of things. But it was very heavy veg and slightly more meat than we were typically consuming.
Yeah. Can you expand upon that thing you just glossed over?
Yes. So let me back up just a hair. And in January of 2019, I went to the emergency room I woke up in the middle of the night with just excruciating pain on my right side. I had no idea what it was. I went to the bathroom and it was so painful that I was vomiting and I had diarrhea. And I just went back into the bedroom, woke my husband up and said, I need to go to the emergency room. I'm in substantial pain. No clue. We went to the emergency room. They did some examination and concluded that I had a kidney stone. So they sent me home with like a little strainer to catch the kidney stone. I didn't use it, but I did end up seeing it whenever it passed. Turns out, yeah, I had an oxalate kidney stone. So didn't think anything of it at the time, didn't think anything about oxalates at the time. I hadn't gotten into all of the plant toxin research and that kind of stuff yet. So when I started eating all of those vegetables when we were on the ketogenic diet, the reason we transitioned to the carnivore diet is because I had significant stomach distension, that I was like, something's not, like, I'm having like some gut issues that I still need to work through. So let's go a little bit deeper into this. But one
Can
of
I
the
stop
things.
you quick for a second?
Sure.
So the stomach distension, was that something you had before going keto?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, I had stomach fat, but that's not what that's not the distension that I'm referring to. This was. Go ahead.
And one more thing so that was January of 19, you had the kidney stone. Previous to that, and because of what you know now with all you've learned, was your diet very high in oxalates before that? Kidney stone?
Oxalates that would be included in like grain products and things like that.
Chocolate?
Oh, well, yeah, I wouldn't ever like consider myself like, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with chocolate. Yeah. Chocolate was definitely there, but it wasn't, anything like obscene.
Were you doing much for nuts before then? Peanut butter or
nothing like I did like on the ketogenic diet.
okay, just curious.
Yeah, nothing like I did on the ketogenic diet. Yeah. So while we were keto, one of the things that started presenting, I don't know if now is a good time to bring up the butt crystal. Do you remember my butt crystal?
I do.
So I was getting out of the shower one day and I guess
is this your keto now?
Yes, I'm keto.
Okay. All right.
and no clue what this is, right? So I'm getting out of the shower one day and I just kind of like rub my hands along my body just to make sure that I guess I got all of the water drops off with my towel. And so I do that and I run it along my left butt cheek. And I feel something on my left butt cheek, something kind of like catches, like something sharp kind of catches. And I'm like, well, that's weird. I'm thinking like I'm Czech, so I'm covered in peach fuzz. So I'm like, well, maybe it's like a hair or something like that.
Uh-huh.
So I don't really think anything of it. The next day I do it again. It's still there. And at this point, I'm trying to like grab onto it with the, edges of my fingernails. And I can't get it. So I go another day, I do it again. It's still there. Well, finally it gets to a point where I'm able to grab it with my fingernails and I pull it out of my butt cheek and I put it in the palm of my hand. And it literally looks like a shard of glass. I went to my husband and I was like, I think I sat in glass. Okay. So I think that's the end of the story. Well, this sucker comes back 3 times in the exact same
Oh my
spot.
God.
In the exact same spot. So it was at this point where like the 3rd time where I realized, okay, I didn't sit in glass. This is something pushing out of my body. Lo and behold, my conclusion is that it was oxalate crystal pushing out of my left butt cheek. And then after the 3rd time, gone, done, hasn't come back, but that is my crystal butt cheek.
So I'm imagining, Courtney, after we finish this, I'm going to be creating the thumbnail for the YouTube. So I'm thinking, what are we going to put on your thumbnail? It's like, it'll be anxiety disorder, low back pain, chronic fatigue syndrome, and butt cheek crystals.
Butt cheek crystals. Hey, I'm here for it. People need to hear this. Yeah. So I guess I'm thankful that that's where it chose to make its exit, as opposed to like, an oxalate crystal coming, in my kidney again, because that was just excruciating. But yeah, so that's my story with oxalates with regard to and I mean, we were eating, I told you at the beginning of this call, I probably would go through a container of almond butter a week because that was like my dessert. I would have a meal and then I would take a spoon of almond butter, or 2, or maybe 3 if I was feeling frisky.
Yeah.
A lot of the keto treats, which, are all almond flour based, tons of spinach. We went on vacation to St. John that October, so a month after, and every meal that we had, you're trying to like substitute things, like you would get a meal and you're trying to substitute the crap. So you're like, well, just give me a side of spinach.
Yeah.
So that was very heavy oxalate.
And and it was the stomach distension that got you to drop the keto and go full carnivore.
Yeah. I told my husband that I just want to try this just for 30 days, just to see if I notice a difference on the distension. And he was like, okay, let's do it. And, here we are over 3 years later.
Yeah. And the stomach distension, how quickly did that go away?
Pretty quickly. Yeah. The stomach distension went away pretty quickly. And I noticed that whenever I do, like if I do bring back in broccoli, or cauliflower or something like that, I unfortunately notice that kind of, what I can describe it as is it slows down significantly for me, the transit time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's no secret there, but and in doing so, it produces more of a pooch, if you will.
Yep.
So, yeah.
All right. So then you go carnivore, distension goes away. Tell us what happens after that.
I can begin living the life that I always dreamed of. And that comes across probably really cheesy, but when we changed our diet, that was when we started living. I lost 10 pounds when we went keto. And again, this was never about weight loss for me. It was always about inflammation. That was why I agreed to do the ketogenic diet. But I lost 10 pounds when we were keto. And then when we went carnivore, I lost another 10 pounds. So down 20 pounds. But it was when we changed our diet, everything started opening up for us. health, life, adventures, it's really hard for people to understand, try not to get emotional, to sleep 10 hours at night, and wake up and literally plan your day around when you can take a 2-hour nap. Because you wake up and it's like you never slept. It's like you never went to bed. So just kind of living day to day for, 18 plus years in this fog and lethargy and just, really heavy, real heaviness, and not ever thinking that was how, that's how you were going to spend the rest of your days. This was just my plot in life, and never being told any different. So when we changed our diet and those things started lifting and you started to get more and more empowered, okay, if I'm seeing improvements here, can I see improvements here? And so that's, even if it does sound cheesy, that's what we got our lives back.
Awesome. And that goes for your husband too.
Absolutely. Yeah, he also has a list on his phone of men are funny with, they're like, oh, I'm not really experiencing anything. You don't have any issues. I just want to lose a little bit of weight. Well, then you have this list on your phone of all of these things that they've been experiencing that have now fallen by the wayside, in addition to 85 pounds. So yeah, husband has seen some amazing benefits as well.
Yeah. And it's not uncommon when people go carnivore, as you know, that various things can happen in transition. Any side effects for you going carnivore?
Gosh, that were negative? Ooh, I'll have to think about that one.
I thought you told me you had diarrhea for months.
That wasn't the transition though. I was already 2 years into it at that point. Yeah, I didn't get the
oh, so that didn't happen initially.
No, that started let's see, we're in 2023. That started in mid 2022.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up, because that was out of freaking left field. And I now believe that was also 6 months of oxalate dumping. I mean, Michael, it was brutal. It was 8 to 9 times a day that I was going to the bathroom.
Oh, wow.
You just put a morsel of food on the tip of your tongue, the body's nope. So yeah, I was well into the carnivore journey. I actually didn't have that carnivore diarrhea, that kinds of things. I didn't experience that. And that may have been because I had a chronic, life history of constipation. I have no idea, but I didn't get that. I didn't get keto flu or, any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, about 2 years into it, boy.
Okay. This is a good reminder for folks because, I hear Sally Norton talk about this, how some people go carnivore and they feel awesome for a year. And then all of a sudden, shit hits the fan, literally in this case, but in various ways. I mean, people start getting all the signs of oxalate dumping and they didn't have any for a while. I know one of my clients, he didn't have any strong symptoms of oxalate dumping, but he purposely, went on a low oxalate diet and then gradually went more and more towards closer to full on carnivore. But a year in, all of a sudden his right knee just totally swelled up.
Oh, yeah.
And he had nothing like that previous, a little bit of some quasi gout symptoms, but not like a knee ballooning up.
Mm-hmm.
And it ballooned up for I think it was only for a few days, and then boom, it was gone. And that's some of the crazy, those things that come and go really fast. You've probably seen this in your practice as well, but it's pretty clear that's oxalate when, you didn't have an obvious injury and a joint goes crazy for a few days or a week or two.
Yeah.
And then it just mysteriously goes away.
Yeah. You know, what's funny too is people never attribute like the sandiness and the stools to
Yeah.
oxalates. So when you're kind of like vetting through as you're working with clients and you're asking them about their stools, and you kind of like have a suspicion that they might be having an oxalate issue, and then you're like, well, do you ever notice like sandy stools or anything like that? And sometimes they're like, yeah, like, you know, like it's totally normal for them. And I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
that's oxalate, sweetheart.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be grainy. But yeah, so that was really, really brutal. And it went on for like a solid 6 months.
And did you know about oxalates at that point that it,
I did know about oxalates at that time, but it was not to like gross anyone out, but it was like pure liquid. So I wasn't like fully on board that that's what it was initially. It took me a
yeah,
while to get there. Actually, it took feedback from other practitioners to be like, yeah, so here's what I think's going on.
yeah. Well,
So,
and that can be scary if you have no idea.
yeah.
I mean, it's like, especially since you've been feeling so much better for what, almost 2 years. And
I
then
know.
all of a sudden it's like, well, we didn't just go to Mexico and pick up a bug, or,
Right.
no, we weren't drinking out of the stream in the mountains. And, so what's going on?
I know. It was so crazy. And thankfully that has since subsided and all is well again. But yeah, it's pretty brutal.
Did you, during that time when that was happening, I mean, you can lose, especially since it was very liquid, as you
Mhm.
described. Were you really pumping up your electrolytes to try to
Oh yeah.
compensate?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. And it was so bad that I don't want to say I couldn't keep weight on, but I went lower in weight than I would normally want for myself. I'm 5'7", so I kind of hover around the 120 mark, but had gotten down to like 114 and 115
Yeah.
at one point, and it was pretty lean, even for me. So I was not absorbing the nutrients from the food that I was consuming, and I was eating like a substantial amount of calories. I'm not like a
Yeah.
calorie restrictor. I mean, we're talking
Yeah.
like between 2,000 to 3,000. So it was just that bad that I really wasn't absorbing the food
Yeah.
that I was consuming, as nutritious as it was.
And then, I'm guessing you probably knew then that one of the ways to combat heavy oxalate dumping is adding in some higher oxalate food, at least a small amount. Did you play with that at all?
Didn't. No, I would say
No.
the only
Just
oxalate that
curious.
I still consume even to this day is coffee.
Oh, coffee's actually quite low.
Yeah. So I'm not, I mean, I knew that, but I say that to say that no, I didn't
Oh,
bring
okay.
I didn't
Okay.
bring oxalates. Apparently, I just, was
Powered
riding
through
the
it.
waves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, butt crystals.
And then it just passed on its own then. You didn't do anything.
No, it
Wow.
just passed on it. And
Yeah.
again, it was one of those kind of like the back pain thing. Like you wake up one day and it's like, hey babe, I don't want to mean to brag, but I just had a solid bowel movement for the first time in 6 months.
Yeah.
It started to be more consistent in terms
Yeah.
of how having them every day, and then I was totally over the hump.
Okay. Nice. Good. Okay. So you go carnivore, everything starts feeling better. Say little specifics around, because the first major symptom that you spoke to us about today was being diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. So can you talk about how that transitioned?
Yes. So I think I had already started, or I had already communicated to my psychiatrist and my therapist. First of all, let me back up a little bit. In 2018, I had what I now affectionately refer to as the breakdown of 2018. I had made the decision to leave a company that I thought I was going to retire with to go to another company. And it was just because the stress of this company had gotten it was unbearable. So I made the decision to leave that company, and a switch just went off in my brain, and I really did. I had a breakdown. It was a very, very difficult time. So fast forward a little bit, I did all different kinds of things to try to kind of get me out of this really, really debilitating spiral of anxiety. Now, mind you, I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder and medicated at 18. I was put on an antidepressant at 18. Never like a benzo or any of that kind of stuff. It was antidepressant. So I was on that for 18 plus years and struggled with anxiety that entire time. I mean, it was one of those things where you open your eyes in the morning and you're like, how are we feeling? Are we going to have anxiety today? It's kind of like you're always checking in, like waiting for it to rear its ugly head. So fast forward, I have the breakdown of 2018. I do all these things. I, pay $1,000 to learn transcendental meditation, just all different kinds of things. I also have a list on my phone of all of the different things that I tried. And I would feel better for a few days just because I learned a shiny new thing and, and this is going to be the thing that works. And then, it would kind of like fizzle out and boom, here it is again. So I had already realized that this medication that I had been on for 18 plus years was no longer serving its useful purpose. So then I started reading books, and I read a book by Dr. Kelly Brogan. She's kind of a turncoat psychiatrist, called Own Your Mind. And she was really this first person that planted a seed that I did not have to live with this my entire life, that I could do something about it, that medication was not serving me, that I could live a life without anxiety, without being medicated, all those things. So that seed was planted whenever I read that book. Again, this was shortly after my breakdown of 2018. So then fast forward, we decide that we're going to change our diet. We go keto on September 1st of 2019. I had already communicated to my psychiatrist and my therapist at that point, like, hey, I really want to start like weaning myself off of this anxiety medication. I want to see if I can do it without it. And we go keto, and I'm slowly, and this was a painstakingly slow process. I don't recommend anyone does it on their own. Always have like the support of, professionals to do it with. But it was painstakingly slow, and I would just, I'm not going to go through like the number of milligrams that I would reduce it by, but we finally got there. And during that transition process was a little painful. There were a lot of bumps in the road. There were lots of moments where I was like, can I actually do this? Like, can I really do this without this medication? Maybe that's why I've been feeling this random, spurts of normalcy or things like that. But I stuck with it, had their guidance, stuck with it. And on January 26th of 2020 is when I took my last antidepressant. Long story, maybe slightly shorter, is that I really just do not experience anxiety anymore. Just to give you like a frame of reference. So this is the first podcast that I've ever done. And any kind of like speaking engagement like this that might be broadcasted to a larger audience, even if it's just like a room full of people, would completely debilitate me. Like completely debilitate me. I could not do it. Terrible fear of public speaking. I would prepare for weeks if I knew that something like this were coming up. And it's just, that's just one example, but that it just doesn't exist for me anymore. I just really kind of love this embracing of everything now, just kind of like let it come to me and I can totally handle it. Oh man, one of the heaviest parts of my breakdown in 2018 was there was a period, and this might get me emotional, but there was a period of time there where when I would go to the bathroom and I would be washing my hands, I could not look at my reflection in the mirror because it scared the shit out of me, because it wasn't me at that point. It was something dark and heavy and terrifying. And so I wouldn't look at myself in the mirror. When you have anxiety, like you're told by society that, you can't be trusted, you can't trust yourself. You're capable of doing these really terrible things, right? Like anytime there's a shooting or, something like that, they go straight for their mental health, right? So then you kind of like read these stories and it's like, well, I'm not capable of something like that. But it just instills this fear in you that you are not to be trusted and you cannot trust yourself. And that is so dark and like such a scary place to be. So I just remember that part of 2018 where I would just go to the bathroom and I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. And it was absolutely awful. And I have no idea where I was going with this, but anyways, we made it over the hump. And yeah, I just don't experience that kind of stuff anymore. I really just try to roll with the punches. And I'm just enjoying life, like free from that, the grips of that.
So so when you took your last med was really close to when you went carnivore, right?
Yeah, it was actually before. Yeah, January 26th, 2020 was when I took my last prescription, my last medication, my last pill. And then February 19th of 2020 was when we started carnivore.
Okay. Okay. All right. And then after that point of that last pill, did things resolve pretty quickly?
In terms of anxiety?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, they had already resolved really like by and large, but otherwise January 26th wasn't my goal. Like it wasn't my goal date, but it was the end of that bottle and I didn't want to refill that bottle. So I made it, the last thing. Otherwise, I could have drug it out even longer. It ended up being a 6-month process, 6-month weaning process. If I had more, I probably would have drug it out even slower just because I didn't know. I'd been on it for 18 years. And so I wanted to like make sure my body knew how to like reproduce the things that it was being compensated for from this drug. I don't even know if that, was really a thing with that specific drug. But what's crazy is that after looking into that drug, once I had already gotten off of it, that is apparently one of the hardest ones to come off of. And I think Kelly Brogan talks about expect an 18-month basically withdrawal process. So I don't want to say that there were no hiccups. There absolutely were. But thankfully, I think with the approach to the way that we did it, and because of the diet, because I had already changed so many things, that I didn't experience that 18-month kind of warning that she talks about.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm guessing you went through a radical shift with how much saturated fat you were consuming.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. So, which is awesome. I mean, I've studied a little bit with Georgia Ede on mental illness. And if people don't know, Georgia Ede is she calls herself, she's a psychiatrist, but she also says she does nutritional psychiatry. And she's one of the most brilliant people I know have really dived into the research on ketogenic diets and other diets that support mental health. And she just speaks so strongly of how critical it is to get enough cholesterol, the thing that all of us were told is so bad for us. And she's getting people off their psychiatric meds all the time now, over these past decade or so by getting them on a ketogenic diet and increasing cholesterol, saturated fat. So you're a perfect example of that model.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's awesome. It's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else you need to or would like to share about the anxiety? It sounds like it resolved pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Big picture.
There was work that I had started doing when I had the break, just kind of like spiritual and, like the meditation and that kind of stuff. So I don't know if I gave myself, if that contributed to my runway, if you will. But, and then I just had an amazing support system and my husband and, like I still visit with the therapist that, worked with me through that. He's an amazing friend. I want people no one ever told me that, diet and lifestyle could influence your mental health. I just always subscribed to the model that, well, my mom struggled with depression and my dad is, he has anxiety too. So that's just the life that I'm destined to. I
Yeah,
really,
but must be genetic and you're destined to it.
yes.
Yeah.
And that is one of my biggest pet peeves, not just with mental health, but with so many other health, like, symptomology and health ailments and things like that. So now I want to let some of those people off the hook that, who never gave me that nutrition advice, because I just don't think that they know. I genuinely didn't think that psychiatrist knew that, my diet and lifestyle could impact my health. So, and I probably at that time, Michael, was not in a place to listen to it. In fact, I remember buying a book one year that was like, first, I can't remember. I think it's Sarah Wilson is the name of the author. I'd have to fact check it, but it's like, first you have to make the beast beautiful. And it was about her story with anxiety and what helped her overcome her anxiety. And I remember reading in the book, I never finished the book because I thought it was absolute bullshit. Because in the first 30 pages, she's like, you've got to completely cut out sugar. I'm like, oh, this is stupid. And I literally never read the book. So that's what I mean. Like, even if someone had told me, just change your diet and lifestyle and you'll see improvements. At that time, I just don't think I was in a place to hear it. I didn't know what I didn't know. So I really just want people to know that they're not like destined for living a life with their mental, illness or anything. It goes so far beyond just mental health with everything. You'd really be hard pressed to come at me with something that you're experiencing it and me not think that we can't move the needle on it. I think that we can improve everything. I really do.
Yep, I agree. Yeah. Yep. And all of us are unique, and some people can just change their diet and that gets it done. And other people have to add in other things, you did as well, whether it be meditation or other lifestyle changes. Yeah. But, and that's the reason I'm motivated to do these interviews with folks, because for me on my own healing journey, these testimonial videos of people making changes, they've just always inspired me and keep me going. So it's like, okay, I wanted, and for me, even just doing the interview, it's a win-win for me too. Not only that I can share this information with other people, but it's like, I love connecting with people and hearing their stories directly like this. So thanks again. We're not done, but thanks.
No,
Again
absolutely. And I like to that point, Michael, when I'm working with clients and they're kind of like stuck in this negative, like, I'm never going to be able to overcome this, I'll tell them that the one thing that they can watch, if they're going to research what they're experiencing, the one thing they can watch are the success stories. So I think that what you're doing with this channel and with these videos is so, so important, because it is a resource for me to be like, hey, you can go here and you can watch these healing and these success stories. And those are what you can watch, because we want to constantly give these people hope.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. So, okay, we've covered how you move through your anxiety disorder. You're going to have to help me in here now. So in this, did we cover how you came out of the low back pain?
Well, we don't know how I came out of the low back pain.
Okay.
That was one of those things where it was, and I still think that I was still in the keto space, when I would just like wake up, and it was not one of those things where I'm like, it takes you a minute to get out of the bed and kind of like fully get to a straight angle, or I could sit for longer periods at my desk without like having to go through that same warm-up process anytime I needed to stand. Whenever we would go on road trips, like to Austin or something, because we're south of Houston, that's about a 3-hour drive, we would have to stop so many times. And so it was like noticing these behaviors that you had been dealing with for years, start to like fall by the wayside, but it doesn't immediately snap to you. Like it almost becomes like second nature because you've just been experiencing it for so long. And then it's like one day, well, holy crap, we went that entire trip to Austin and we stopped one time and that was to pee. It wasn't because I needed to do my stretches or, anything like that.
Yeah.
Or I used to have this like butt pillow that I had to sit on to try to support because it was the L4 and L5. So it was this embarrassing like butt pillow that I would used to have to sit on. Even at work, I had one. Like I got to the point where I could completely remove that. I didn't have to use that anymore. It was just, that was one of those things that was just kind of like, it snuck up on you in terms of, alleviating.
And do you know or have a sense, did that start to transitioning when you're on keto or not till you went carnivore?
Yeah, I actually think that it fully subsided whenever I was keto.
Yeah.
Because the reason I pushed for the carnivore, let's just do 30 days of carnivore. The reason that was very specific to the stomach distension that I was experiencing.
Yeah.
If I didn't have that stomach distension, I probably would have just stayed doing keto and been ignorant to all of the like plant toxins and what the oxalates were doing to me and that kind of stuff. So thankful for the stomach distension because
that's why I keep, as much as I know about oxalates, and not that everything in just health is oxalates, but that said, with the amount of oxalates you increased in your diet going keto, I have to say, part of me, the stomach distension makes total sense.
Yeah.
Because that's, joints and digestive stuff are two of the most common symptoms for oxalates. But boy, with the amount of almond butter and spinach you were eating, I'm surprised your low back didn't get worse.
Yeah.
So the fact that it got better during that phase, I think it says a lot about your personal vitality, the core vitality in your body.
Well, it's that left butt cheek, Michael.
There you go. Or your body's pushing out the oxalates in different avenues.
Yeah. Well, I do still think that they're making their way out of my skin. That my skin is the telltale of where I've gone off course. So I just recently took a trip to New York to go visit some family up there, and there is a keto bakery up there that we like to go to. Well, it's a coffee shop, but they have keto baked goods.
Yep.
And I indulged in a keto baked good. And Michael, I had it the morning I went to get on the plane. I got off of that plane and my face was destroyed. I mean, I had bumps all over my face. So I am actually still, I'm not even sure if you can tell, I'm actually still recovering from it. So the oxalates love making their way out of my stool and my skin, apparently.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Yeah. And that was how recently?
That was like 3 weeks ago.
Oh, wow. And it's still coming out your face. And just one little keto thing. Wow. Yeah.
It was a keto chocolate chip cookie, almond flour.
Yeah.
Don't do it, folks. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Low back, the anxiety, the exhaustion, chronic fatigue stuff. When did that start shifting?
Also during keto.
During keto, yeah, cool.
I just I think I got rid of so much inflammation, even though I was still including like inflammatory vegetables and things like that. I think, you know how they say, like, you can, if you're going to be a sugar burner, be a sugar burner, but you can't be a shitty sugar burner. I was a shitty sugar burner. And so when I got rid of all of the, can we cuss on here? I'm so sorry. So
you're fine.
When I got rid of all of the breads and the yeast and the grains and the starches and all of that kind of stuff, and like reduced the carbs so significantly that I think my body was just like, fine, you know, it finally had like an efficient fuel source to run off of. So the chronic fatigue stuff and the napping, that was definitely during keto.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So now you've been carnivore for 3 years.
3+ years. Yeah. February 19th was 3 years.
of 20.
Uh-huh.
Yep. Okay. All right. So now so many things have gotten better. Were there any things that surprised you that got better? Like, oh my God, my brain is working better,
Oh, well, that's a given.
or
Um,
my your ringing in your ears went away, or
I didn't have ringing in my ears, thankfully. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that surprised me. I mean, honestly, they all surprised me, right? Once you realize they actually subsided, that's a surprise in itself. What I think has been surprising is that, they've not come back. It's still kind of like this disbelief, like, is it gone for just a little bit? But, the fact that they've been gone all this time, you
yeah,
really start to believe like, yeah, that's our former life.
3 years is a pretty good cushion in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're like ready to wrap things up here. Is there anything you'd like to add or tell people to wrap things up from your end of your story?
I I hope that it gives people a glimpse of hope. And if they're, getting any kind of like hangups, or, they're not fully committed, they're not fully on board, they're struggling with the support system and things like that. I hope hearing my story and other people's stories of people that you've interviewed gives them a little nugget to persevere.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, tell people who are watching where they can find you.
So I am Courtney Voss. You can find me on Instagram at Neurotic Farmer, although I'm not so neurotic anymore.
And I was going to say, you gotta explain that, because I'm seeing that it's on your t-shirt too.
Yeah, so this is my nutrition company. This is what I operate under, is Neurotic Farmer. My husband and I bought, I guess that's a important thing. My husband and I bought a farm a couple of years ago. When we realized like we were all in on this diet. We bought 43 acres, and we were in the process of restoring what was once a working cattle farm back into a farm where we'll raise animals to feed ourselves and our family and friends. So that's a painstakingly slow process as well, but that's when I was on Instagram years ago, I called myself the functional neurotic, and I was very, very much still in the thralls of anxiety at that time.
Yeah.
So I got off of social media for a couple of years, and then whenever we started Neurotic Farmer, I needed to have a way to get the name out there, to start working with people. So I just kind of readopted it. It's catchy, but I'm not so neurotic anymore. I tell people like, I think I just posted something the other day, and I said, Neurotic Farmer, where we're neurotic about your health, so you don't have to be.
Oh, there you go. I like that. Cute.
But yeah, that's where you can find me, and you can email me at Courtney@neuroticfarmer.com. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you.
You have a great story to tell, and so thank you for sharing it with all of us. So I'm going to sign off. Michael Mathieu, Vibrant Health, and thanks again, Courtney Voss, and until next time, bye everyone.